Hi, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else. Today we're doing a ranking of one of the most respected modern songwriters, singer-songwriters, Fiona Apple. I'm joined here with Adrian, my usual co-host. Aiden can't be with us today. He's busy. He's got a lot of stuff on his plate, but he'll be with us next week. And we have our good friend Vanessa here to offer her thoughts on Fiona Apple.
Hi.
You aren't Aiden.
No, quite different from Aiden.
Yeah, that's true. You aren't a Dave Clark 5 fan.
No.
Already a minute in, so it's not Aiden.
I thought we both just go for Dave Clark 5. I want the Dave.
The Fiona Apple discography. I discovered her music 2 years ago because Fetch the Bolt Cutters was marketed as a big comeback. It was a big deal, and honestly, I'd never really heard her music before. It's not really that popular on the radio around where I live, and I think honestly the only time I really heard her is they mentioned her name on an episode of Breaking Bad. So I'm fairly new to the discography, but I do really enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat there. I listened to it, I want to say around late 2020, because that's when I was getting into music and I really enjoyed it. I think I went back and I listened to Extraordinary Machine, and then a little bit last year I listened to Tidal, but I just never got around to listening to the rest of them. I'd owned all 5, but it's a great discography. All of her acclaim is pretty well justified, in my opinion. It's going to be really interesting to hear everybody's opinions, Vanessa.
My experience is a little different. I got to know her with her first hit in '97, Criminal. And I really liked that song and was really into the first 2 albums when I was in university. But after that, I kind of lost track of her for the most part. And I did listen to Fetch the Bolt Cutters when it came out, but at that time, it just wasn't the right thing for me. So going back, this was a little different. I had heard them all except for the Idler Wheel before, but it was definitely interesting to revisit for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of what happens with those artists when they take that big 6-year break or that, and you sort of lose track of them by that point. Doesn't help Extraordinary Machine wasn't exactly as big as the first 2. So
no, and it's funny because I don't remember why I didn't get into it at the time, because I had some of the leaked songs and I liked them. But for whatever reason, I think I heard the album and it was different than what I'd heard from the leaks, and I just didn't go any further with it. So
that's totally fair. You get used to one thing and you just want to keep on to that.
Yeah.
Well, with that being said, it seems Steph and I are going to be a little bit higher on Fiona from what you've been saying. Do you want to go ahead and kick us off?
Sure. So my number 5 is actually Extraordinary Machine. It's a different style from what I had been used to with her, with the first 2 albums. I appreciate what she's doing on it. I think it's cool, but it just doesn't connect with me. I appreciate that the raw lyrics and the more creative approach to songwriting and everything, but I don't know. I listened to it a few times this last couple weeks, and it just I know I'm not going to want to go back to it. It's not something that really connected. So that's really what's missing there. I'm giving it 3 stars. So it's not a bad album, but for me, that just means I might go back to it, but I might not. And it's not something that I'm going to seek out. So sorry.
I won't be talking about that one for a good while, just so you know. I'll buy in here with my next one. My bottom, and the only one that I don't think is a great album, is going to be The Idler Wheel. Is wiser than the driver of the screw, and whipping cords will serve you more than roses will ever do. This is one of the 2 albums I didn't know going into this and When the Pawn, and I was really excited to see what this one was going to have to offer because it has a lot of acclaim. Apparently, it would have made Fantano's top 200 of the decade if he didn't forget about it, which makes sense because I think that this is kind of her least interesting record overall. I'm really neutral on most of these cuts. Every Single Night, Valentine, and Jonathan, they don't really do a ton for me. I don't hate them. They're pleasant to listen to. But they just don't hit any of the peaks that her other records do, you know? There are absolutely some gems because it's Apple. The two punches that are Werewolf and Periphery are excellent and showcase the best elements of the record as a whole. And I found myself loving the closer Hot Knife maybe the most. But past the clear standouts here, most of the record is just very neutral to me. I think that it has a lot of her weaker vocal performances, very notably on the song Regret, where I just don't like her performance at all. I'm going to go with a high 3 stars because I still think that it's really great musically, and I think that she has a lot of talent to herself. But I think with repeated listening, it might get to 3.5, but I don't see myself ever calling this record great.
All right. My number 5 is Extraordinary Machine also. I have it at 4 out of 5. So this is definitely an artist I think is, if I don't go below 4 for an artist discography, I really like it. And it's a good album. I listened to these in order in a row last night, and hearing this right after When the Pawn is a very noticeable. It was a little bit of a letdown because I really love what John Bryan added to the production sound on When the Pawn, but it's missing from this album, and I don't know. It just leaves like, and keeps the songs from like really rising above like a middle of the road feeling for me. And it feels, I don't know, as a whole, this album just kind of feels like your standard like textbook middle of the career album where it's a fine album, but you're not really breaking any new ground, and it's just kind of not like furthering, like it's not like an artistically like it doesn't move the artist forward artistically or creatively or anything. It's just kind of the same thing you already heard already before. But there's some good songs on here. I really like Red 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 a lot. I definitely put that in my top 10 favorite songs. The Kick in the Head song is my favorite cut on the album. Got a really good groove to it. It kind of feels like something you'd hear like a villain like creeping behind some trees or something, the way it rolls along. But yeah, I don't see myself revisiting this one as a whole very often, and I feel this way with a lot of her albums because I'm a songwriter also, and I really love like lyrics that give me a lot to think about mentally. But she does have a tendency to overwrite, and I feel like a lot of times the lyrics are a little too dense for their own good. It's like you have to like really like focus in on them and stuff. And also, my biggest issue with Fiona Apple is she's a really great writer, but she overuses the same thing over and over again, and that's fine, you know. But like, I get that it feels good to like write about like being wronged and like failed relationships and stuff like that. But it's like I really would like to hear some more variety. And the criticism I used to hear a lot when I took writing classes was when you a good writer tries to avoid being stuck in like the I me mind like mindset, and nearly every single song I think in the entire catalog is very focused on I feel this way or this happened to me. It's all very focused directly on themselves, which is fine. You know, she does it very well. I understand why she does that over and over again, but I wouldn't. I don't listen to her as much as like other songwriters for that reason. It's just not a whole lot of variety thematically. But she does what she does very well. The music to me is always interesting, even if the lyrics are hit and miss on these albums. She's a very good musician. I like piano-driven music a lot, and it's a good listen, even if this isn't an album I'm going to really listen to very often. So it's my number 5, and I give it 4 out of 5. Extraordinary Machine.
That was a 4-star review.
Yeah, I'm still tired.
It's okay. Hopefully, you'll wake up to that record soon enough.
Right. So my number 4 is the Idler Wheel. I could hear immediately from the beginning that she's doing something different on this album. At first, I really wasn't sure how I felt about it. But I grew to appreciate it when I went back to it. Like, I gave it a fairly scathing review the first time I listened to it. But when I went back, I was like, okay, no, I'm being too hard on this. But like there's a rawness to it, and like I see why people love that. Like I see why people connect to that and really get into that. But for me, it just didn't connect to me that way. So like while I could appreciate it, it was almost like from an outsider perspective, which isn't really the best way to engage with it, of course. So it's kind of an album I respect more than I really enjoy. So yeah, and it's so it sort of falls near the bottom because of that. And it's funny because I have written down notes about some of the songs that are a little different from what you said, Adrian. Like I have Jonathan as a standout, and I liked the piano and the hook on that one. That I don't want to talk about anything, but I didn't like Hot Knife. I made a note of that. It just got what she was doing, but it did not work for me. That overlapping vocals, like it was just, I was not a fan of that. But I do think that the spare arrangements work. It just didn't work for me personally in that emotional connection way. So it's another 3 for me. I probably wouldn't go back to it, but I can't say that I would never either. Like I might. So that's kind of where a 3 falls for me. It's something that, you know, like it's decent and I might revisit it, but I also might not. So
To be fair, I do like all the songs on the record. It's just I don't think that they're great or anything. Mhm. So this is where I'm going to start upsetting people. And I want to make this clear. All of these records are 4 stars or above. I think that these are all great. However, for me, number 4 is When the Pawn. When the Pawn is a clear evolution from Tidal on basically every level. I feel the arrangements are more full and lend to her vocals and her songwriting better. In many ways, the songwriting is more sharp and a little bit more spiteful, which I feel is somewhere she writes from a lot further in the career, and it really works out, which leads to giving a little bit more personability and relatability to the music, I feel. However, I just find myself less engaged in the overall project as opposed to Tidal. On the Bound is one of there's sorry, on the Bound is one of the tracks that I feel runs a little long, which is something that she tends to struggle with at points. Her material just going for like an extra verse longer than it needs to. I didn't really care for the transition between the 2 different sections of Fast as You Can. I think it sounds really awkward personally. With all that being said, though, when the album is good, it's really fantastic overall. To Your Love, Limp, Love Ridden, and Get Gone, especially, are just all brilliant songs. It shows the clear evolution in Fiona as her songwriting and overall her maturity is growing. And while I don't prefer it to be Tidal, I'd probably be lying if I said that I didn't think it was a better objective record. I still have it at 4 stars. I think it's great, but it's just not the one that has connected with me the most. Maybe it's because it doesn't have an ordinary title, and that's why those 2 are at the bottom for me, because she decided to write essays, but
Yeah, I mean, I think she really could have used an editor for most of her career. Because honestly, if like most of these albums are like trimmed, 5 minutes or so, I think, um, I don't know, I'd enjoy them much better personally. Maybe more engaging listens, I think. But I'm next, right? Okay. Um, we're on number 4. Or am I? Yeah.
yes, we're on 4.
Yeah, my number 4 spot is this is really hard to do ranking wise. So like these albums are very he's such a consistent musical artist. I think because he has so much time to work on these records, and it's very hard for me to like really place one above the other. But my number 4 is the debut Tidal, and I wanted to give this a higher score because I really liked it. But I mean, it is a debut still, and it still feels like she hasn't really found like her distinct style. But I give it 4 out of 5. Also, I wanted to give it I wanted to give it 4.5, but I give it 4 because yeah, there's moments on the records where she's doing stuff that doesn't really suit her style. Like I don't have the notes with me for the track listing. There's like that one mellow song where she's like trying to sing in like a really nice, like pretty, like 90s style way with like that 90s like type of bass groove going on, and it's just I don't know, it's a bit unexpected. It sounds good though, but I will say it's one of the best debuts I've definitely heard for like a younger artist. Honestly, I had no idea she wasn't even 18 when she released this. Because if you told me this was like done by like a woman in like her mid-20s, I would definitely believe it. She sounds very mature, and the themes on the song are really, really great. She takes like themes of like adolescence and like high school stories, but she sings about them from like a very mature point of view, and it's very, I don't know, it's really impressive. And I like the subject matter of the song very much. She keeps it real, and I really like that about her. Like Stolen Girl is a really, really strong example look at like what like sexual abuse and trauma can do to like the way a person carries themselves in public and how other people perceive that. And I've never experienced sexual abuse myself, but I've had trauma and I know exactly how that feels. Like you always have an ocean raging inside you, but you just still have to like somehow keep a straight face. And then of course everyone else thinks you're an outcast or something. But it's a good song. I don't hear songs like that very often. And it shows that she's a good writer because on a lot of the songs she like that other song, I have a hard time remembering a lot of these titles to the songs, honestly, but there's that other song about where it's sung from the point of view of a girl who like clearly takes advantage of a guy for the sake of it, but she feels bad about it. She feels a sense of shame about it. A lesser songwriter would just like write about how fun it is to like take someone's heart and rip it in two and throw it away. But she focuses on like the interesting like psychological dynamic going on beneath it, and that's why I think she's a really great songwriter, and that's why she's like so respected in what she does. But yeah, the songs are all really good. I like the flow of the album too. There's a nice stretch towards the end where it gets really, really mellow, and it's very relaxing, and I really like it. It's a really good chill out album, even though it is chaotic sometimes in the theme. But very good album, very strong debut. I really like it, even if it is. He was young at the same time, but it's a very confident debut. He has a really good, mature, like jazz, old school jazz singer voice. He kind of sounds like one of those old '50s singers, like Chris Connor. I hear a little bit of Billie Holiday sometimes too. But yeah, really fine record. I really like the songs a lot, and I don't know, I just really vibe with her. I like her personality outside of music, and yeah, great album. 4 out of 5.
Right. So I don't know how controversial my number 3 is, but here it is anyway. I'm going with Fetch the Bolt Cutters at number 3. It went up for me quite a bit listening to it for this because when it first came out, I did not like it. But I wasn't listening to a lot of albums in 2020, and like everyone was going through a lot of crap and like I just didn't like the chaos of it. Like I needed something lighter and it just wasn't the right thing for me at the time. So coming from it from a different place, it definitely made a big difference. I think it starts very strong. Like I really love that song at the beginning, "I Want You to Love Me." Like as soon when I first put it on for my first listen for this, I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is gonna go way up. Um it didn't totally happen, but like I think that's a great song. And like I think Shamika as well is a really good kind of continuation. It keeps the album going. Like there's a different kind of passion I hear here. Like it's just something, not to say that she didn't have passion before, but there's just something about this album. Like she's coming at it really, I don't know, really, really hard. So like I thought that was cool. And Fetch the Bolt Cutters is a super memorable song, which is something I had a hard time with the previous 2 albums. There wasn't a lot of songs I found super memorable, but that song, like I even remembered from my first listen 2 years ago. So I thought that was pretty cool. It's always stuck with me. So that's a standout. I think though, as it goes on is where it kind of starts to lose me. Like as the album continues, I'm like, okay, like this is cool, but I'm pretty done with it by the end of it. Like, so it's just another one of those ones. Like, I guess her style as she's evolved as an artist just isn't what I want. And I'm not even sure if I can articulate exactly what it is that doesn't totally connect, but it does work better on this album than the prior two. But like, I don't know. So it's this one's still a 3.5 for me, but I mean, it could go up though. Like it's one that I could see like going back to and liking it and appreciating it a lot more. Like I think what she did with it is really cool. Like all the different sounds she incorporated and like just all the things she tried. Like she really that was really cool. So
I know we were talking about this a little bit before, but my lockdown album was Charlie XCX, so I was like totally different. I was just going all crazy. 2020 was a great year for me, honestly. I was just getting into music, everything was turning around. I don't know, I loved it. Just add that into everything contrarian about me. Alrighty, number 3 for me is Tidal. Uh, yeah, this was the first one I listened to, and I was very confused about how I was going to talk about Fiona Apple because I feel like she doesn't give you a lot of material to really just go on these long talks about compared to other artists for me. And you, from the start of this record, you can tell just how great of a lyricist she is and how able to get into these characters that she's able to, and really just build in the songs and the overall direction of her narratives, which helps to make her so endearing as an artist. Sleep a Dream is a gorgeous opener, which is followed by an equally great cut, such as Sullen Girl and Shadowboxer, as well as Criminal, which it's kind of weird that that song charted, if I'm not wrong. Like that song was successful. Yeah, it seems so weird to me that she had that success.
it was a pretty like I remember it being a pretty big hit, like at least on like music video platforms. That would be where I would have seen like what I would consider hits at that time. And it got played quite a bit. So
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know. I guess it's kind of because I kind of put her in a similar zone as like PJ Harvey from that time, and two very different artists and with two very different audiences, I would say. Maybe not that, but So Like Honey's good, but it starts to drag a little bit by the late 3 minute mark. It picks up right away, then again, with The First Taste and Never Is a Promise. I feel like The Child Is Gone is around the same level, but slightly weaker than those previous cuts. And Pale Summer is a pretty clear weakness on this record. I think it's very notably the worst song here. But Carry On is a fantastic tune as well. And it's an album that grew on me a lot with this because I wasn't too strongly one way or another about it. At the end, I'm thinking a pretty strong 4 on this record, pretty close to 4.5, if they had just cut Pale September and maybe trimmed a couple of the songs down.
My number 3 is what's it called again? The second to last, the Idler Wheel or whatever. Yeah, that's right. Number 4. Too long to remember the title. Or no, that's my number 3, but I give it 4 out of 5. I don't know. I was on the fence about giving this one 4.5, but there's just this album is definitely in need of more bangers, honestly. There's good songs on there, and it's a consistently great album, but I feel like I'm gonna apart from like Hot Times, maybe I'm probably gonna forget like how most of these songs go in like tomorrow, honestly. But I do really like the production quality is a big step up from Extraordinary Machine, because for me at least, because like I think Extraordinary Machine was kind of bogged down by like 2005 era technology, but 2000 or this album came out in like 2016 or 2014 or something like that. But okay, 13 sounds good though. It's really spared down. It's not as overproduced. It's very minimal. I really like the change in direction he goes, because like I'm a big music nerd, especially with like theory and like experimentalism and things like that. So I like the percussion ideas. Or like a lot of the songs aren't even using like a standard drum kit. It's like just like banging on tables, things like that. I thought that's a really cool idea. It adds like a primal feel to the song, and I disagree. I really like the layered vocals on like that. It reminds me of like those old school like madrigals, like in classical music and stuff, where you have like a lot of singing going on at the same time. It's cool. I like it. It's really interesting musically. But yeah, not a whole lot to talk about on this one. The lyrics are great as usual. More of the same themes. Songs about ex-boyfriend and things like that, which is fine. I'm not a big relationship person, so it's like it's not my like go-to like topic to like write about or like listen to songs about. But like I said, she does it well. She always does a great job like writing songs and stuff like that. But the album sounds good. I like the music a lot more than the lyrics. Actually, I think uh the music was definitely the main drawing point for me with this album. But it's a really good one nonetheless. I think I'd probably need to listen to it more, to, like really give a more complete review of my thoughts on it. But as of now, it's 4 out of 5, and that's my number 3.
Great. So my number 2 is going to be Tidal. That one, it's at the first, my top 2 I have more of a history with, so that kind of makes sense as to why they fell a little higher. This one was a big album for me when I was in university and like a young adult and like dealing with relationship issues and like a lot of the things touched on in the songs, like I could relate to a lot of the lyrics, and like so it had that kind of special, that extra level of an emotional connection. um I'm a little more removed from that now, so it doesn't hit me quite the same way that it did when I was like 21, but I still really like it and appreciate it. It was still nice to go back to. I hadn't probably listened to it in full in quite a long time. I think it opens really strong. Like those first few songs, Sleep to Dream, Sullen Girl, Shadow Box, or Criminal, they're like among my favorites of her songs, and they still hold up for me. Um, so like Honey's cool too. It's like a little bit jazzy, like it's kind of a nice transition to the rest of the album. But when it gets more mellow is where it kind of loses me a little more. So that, and it's not that I don't like it, but it's not what I want to listen to all the time. I found that by the end, I was like, okay, yeah, this album's done. I'm good. Like, I don't need any more. But I did kind of gain a new appreciation for Never Is a Promise on this listen. Like, I liked the little string flourishes and like the different vocals. Like, it was a change, and I kind of had forgotten about that song. So it was cool to go back to that one. I really, really liked it this time around. So yeah, I think her performance is great, especially for how young she was. The lyrics are awesome. Production sounds really good. It's lush, pretty sounding. And it's good for a certain kind of mood, but like it's not really a mood I'm in very often anymore. So I still really like it, but it's not something I'm gonna listen to all the time. So I'm gonna go with a 4-star rating on this one, but still my number 2.
Yeah, that's still. I think I feel pretty similarly to you on that one. My number 2 is going to be Fetch the Bolt Cutters. Going into this listen, I was actually very worried I was going to have this a lot lower because I remembered liking it a good bit whenever I first listened to it, but it was mainly just specific songs that I felt myself really attached to. But yeah, this album dramatically grew on me, and it's probably because of how neutral I really felt towards the Idler Wheel as a whole. Pretty much every song in this album is a different site, as a different shade of stunning, haunting, or just outright fantastic, in my opinion. The stretch of songs from I Want to Love You to Relay would, is easily some of the best in her catalog, all just reaching these big heights for me within her discography that I think really lend themselves to a amazing sort of words are tricky. Like leads up to like this really great, almost sort of climax that I feel like if this were to be her final record, she could go out really on top with how great the reception was and just the really heightened level of songwriting and maturity everywhere upon this. However, the second half is still consistently great with cuts like Heavy Balloon, Cosmonauts, and On I Go, especially, maybe the best track on the record as a whole. And For Her is also just, it really took me back because I had fully forgotten about that track. But with the heavy imagery and power she uses with her voice, it's able to lend itself and it just being absolutely mesmerizing to me. I felt that she tended to fail in her previous efforts, most notably the Idler Wheel, on really conveying power because of just how bad I think her vocals, well, not bad, but how weak they were on the Idler Wheel compared to the rest of the discography. Um, Man, this has been a clusterfuck of a review right here. I don't have much more to say about it. I just think that it's really consistently great, and it really does deserve all of the praise it's been given. I'm going to go 4.5 on Vegetable Cutters.
All right. I guess that's me now. Yeah, I can't count before 10 a.m. But yeah, my number two spot is second album. Um, hold on, I think I got the title here. Let me see if I can say it. When the pawn hits a conflict, he thinks like a king. What he knows are the blows. When he goes to fight, he'll win the whole thing. Before he enters the ring, there's nobody to batter. When your mind is your mind. So when you go solo, you hold your own hand and remember the depth is the greatest of heights. And if you know where you stand, then you know where to land. And if you follow, no matter, you'll know that you're right. Rolls off the tongue. But two album. Um, I give it 4.5 out of 5, and I feel like this is where she really finds out who she is as an artist. She develops like her classic sound, at least to me. And I don't know, I love John Bryan's production. Every album I've heard where he steps in and adds to the sound, he always makes it sound so good, really lush and pretty. It's like almost like a singer-songwriter version of like an old like Motown production almost, and with like the orchestra, or maybe not Motown, maybe like before that. Like it has a very classic sound and very lush, really strong arrangement. And I don't know, I really like the songs on here. Um, the production really suits the songs very well. The performances are very strong. I love piano playing. I play a lot of guitar, but I really like piano too. And this discography makes me want to get my keyboard back again and kind of start practicing again. But yeah, I really love the songs. Songwriting is great. Her sound starts getting a little more quirky, which isn't really there on the first album. But it does get a bit out of hand later on, that like eccentric, like almost like theatrical, cartoonish vibe. But it works really well on this album. I really like it. Lyrics are really strong. The big highlight on the album to me is the last track, I Know, which is my favorite song in her discography. It's a real gem of a song. And honestly, the strength of that song alone elevates it to like 4.5. Just, I don't know, it's amazing. It's like a modern take on like an old like Irma Thomas or like Dusty Springfield song with a nice jazzy, bluesy vibe to it. I think like this is the most like jazziest album she has in the catalog, which is probably why I love it so much. But yeah, it's a really great album, very strong, in every way. You know. I don't. I wish I had more to say about it, but it's just really good. You know, very solid. Songs are all great. Again, I agree with what Vanessa said. I mean, so much of her stuff is like strongly mood based, and you know, when you're not in that mood, I'm just like definitely don't want to hear it a lot. You know, honestly, but I could see myself coming back this next time in this particular mood. So my number two, When the Pawn, 4 out of 5.
Right, and that's my number one. And there's like not really a lot to say about it. It's true because it's just really good. It's really solid. Like it's probably the one I have the least notes for, even though it is my number one. It was another one that was big for me when I was a young adult, and I really connected to a lot of these songs. So that always kind of elevates something when you go back to it. I think it's stronger sounding right from the beginning. Like you said, like you can tell this is going to be a totally different album than the previous one. I think that the music and her voice just has more muscle to it, and it's just it just starts really great with On the Bound. I love that as an album opener, and I think that To Your Love keeps the energy going. It has some of my favorite songs by her, Limp, Paper Bag, and Fast as You Can, which I guess they were all the singles. I didn't realize that. I just noticed that when I looked it up when we were doing this. But Paper Bag's definitely like my ultimate favorite song of hers. I just love her performance on that song and just everything about it. It's such a great song. And I love the anger that's present on Get Gone. Like it just that I thought that was really great this time around. Like I really enjoyed that. Yeah, so just overall, I think the album has more variety and sounds and tempos from the debut, which is what was welcome for me because especially the first time around re-listening to all this, I was a little lower on the debut actually. than I ended up being because of that mood. Like I just wasn't feeling that kind of mellowness. But when I went back to it again, it was like, okay, yeah, no, I'll accept this a little more for what it is. But I just think this is a more enjoyable listen overall. Just a great album. But yeah, not a lot to really say as an analysis. But my number one, When the Pond, 4.5 stars.
All right, so I have three things I need to do now. To start, I completely concur. I was really struggling to write reviews for all of these albums because I feel like she's an artist where the music just kind of stands for itself. If you like it, you're going to like it. If you don't like it, you just aren't going to like it. There's not a lot to really elaborate on past it. Secondly, I think that my main issue with When the Pawn is I'm not crazy about a lot of the production flourishes on the record. I think it's trying to be a little bit more modern than Tidal, and in that regard, I think it kind of falls flat because it kind of conflicts with her sound overall for me. I get why somebody would love it, but just like going back to the record and it being one of the ones that I was less familiar with, it just doesn't immediately connect with me as much. And lastly, I need to defend my number one, Extraordinary Machine. 5 stars. I absolutely adore this record. It's maybe my favorite record of 2004, and that's a year that has 3 5-star albums for me. Let me pull up my notes here so I can actually see what I have to say about it. Like I was mentioning in calls prior, I was fairly confident coming into here this was going to end up being my number one, but I didn't realize how much that I just love this album as a whole until I came back to it. Like I said, it's 5 stars, and I think that the first 3 songs, being the title track, Get 'Em Back, and Oh Sailor, those might be the best songs in her entire career for me. I just adore all 3 of those songs, and they hit such a perfect note of maturity, just fantastic playing, and it highlights the keys so well, which is really the thing that ties her whole career together, is just how great of a pianist her work plays into everything. Because she may not be the most technical or impressive player, but it adds so much personability and so much intrigue to a lot of her music that just would be lost if she was just like basically staying on guitar and whatnot, which is still there, but and everything going forward from there, I just think is really excellent. Better Version of Me is really interesting. It's really good. Types, Second My Head song. Again, I just think that's really excellent. Parting Gift, Window, and Oh Well almost rival the first 3 songs and just how much I adore them. I think Please, Please, Please has one of her best earworms in her entire catalog. I love the rest of the track and the way that it blends into that chorus. It just is really interesting to me. Red, 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 and Not About Love and Waltz are also just this is what sucks about her because I want to talk more about her, but I just don't have a ton to say. And probably my favorite thing about this record that I think is most notable here is the chaotic sort of brass work that's added into here. It almost reminded me at points of the band Morphine. And it gives this album especially such a unique vibe within her discography that is either going to lend itself to you loving the record or you just aren't going to care as much about it. I see it commonly at the bottom, so I'm not that upset about it, but this is probably my second favorite singer-songwriter album of the 2000s and my favorite record of 2004 as a whole. 5 stars.
Nice. Well, the great thing about this discography is that honestly, any order you put these in is completely. I don't think anyone would be annoyed by that because these are all really great albums. So, of course, my number one is the most recent one, and the one I have a soft spot for because it was my introduction to her and her style is Fetch the Bolt Cutters. And I was on the fence about this, but I'm giving this a tentative 5 out of 5. So I don't know. I think it's out of lyrically, and I'm a really big lyrics person in music. I feel like this is the theme she covers in this album and the way she goes about it is more interesting than any other album for me. And I don't know, the songs are really great. 2020, of course, I wasn't working. I was focusing on school, and it was a really chaotic time for me. So I was a complete nervous wreck. And just staying in my room all day for hours on end, and I just needed something to distract me. So I just listened to stuff nonstop. And thankfully, 2022 brought on some real, really great albums. And My album of the year of that year was Rough and Rowdy Ways by Bob Dylan, but this is probably my second favorite. But yeah, the songs are just so good. It truly is a record for our time. I love the themes she talks about. The lyrical, she deviates from like the usual stuff you expected on the previous albums. Like, I love the lyrics of Shamika because the imagery is so good. I love songs that address like youth told from like an adult perspective. And just the imagery of that song is so perfect. I can feel like myself. I can see myself sitting at my school desk, looking at the clock on the wall, watching the minute hands move, and daydreaming all day long. But yeah, the songs are so good. I love the themes she discusses, and I love the chaotic nature of it. It really works really well to the songs, and it's very the song. This album does the experimental thing that was started on the previous one, but does it better, in my opinion. It's more refined and cohesive here. It feels like it's lending itself better to the statement of the album as a whole. I really love the percussion tricks. Like, um, the song has definitely some of my favorites in the catalog. It's really interesting musically. Um, I love how you just straight up hear her say fuck when she like messes up a take in the middle of is it On and On? Yeah, yeah. On that song. That song's really or it might be drum set, I can't really remember offhand. But I have some issues with it too. It is a little too long and I feel like the second half lags a little bit. But what she's singing about is so interesting to me that it still captures my attention in a way that a lot of modern albums don't. And it's very I totally get the hype behind it. I think it might have been a tad overhyped, honestly, but it didn't really bother me because I didn't really know her stuff beforehand. It was like my complete introduction to her, and after that, I just kind of explored her whole discography, and it was I don't know, it helped make those months of my life much easier. And the lyrics are really great, very blunt, very straight to the point. that lyric, you raped me in your daughter's bed or whatever. God damn, it really. That's what I love about her. She keeps it real. You know, I can tell she's been kicked around by life a bit, but she somehow makes it on top. I like that. I need that energy in my life. That's how I want to carry myself as I get older. And I feel like this is definitely a discography that I'll feel different about as I grow older and maybe have a bit more experience under my belt as far as like relationships and things like that go. But that's a mark of a really good songwriter. Music that unfolds itself over time. Getting a lot to think about. Rack of His is probably my favorite track on the album. Really clever lyrics. I love the imagery of it. It works as a really great double meaning. It's about a rack of guitars, and also it's cool to hear someone talk about a rack of his uh, from a reverse stereotypical view. And it's a very clever song, very interesting musically. The melody is very strange, but it somehow works and is tied together somehow. A drum set is really dope too. That's a banger. And On, really cool. I love the vocal ideas in it. Really interesting album. Not one I'm going to listen to all the time, but it has a very strong soft spot for when I heard it. You know, I love it. 4 out of 5.
Well, this was an interesting week. We said more than I thought we were going to about Fiona Apple. I feel like with her, she's one of the artists where everything that's been said has been said, but it's kind of fun to hear the different opinions and whatnot. I don't think anybody did too bad. Like I said, I thought every record was great or just okay. And yeah, I have no clue how to end this one. So
I will say I hope she releases more music.
mm,
It would be Bolt Cutters would be a fine way to close this artist, but you know, I'd be interested to see where she goes from here if she wants to.
mhm. Out of curiosity, I mentioned it earlier. Who do you prefer? Because I kind of view them in a similar light. Who do you prefer, Fiona Apple or PJ Harvey? I know where Vanessa stands here, but
PJ Harvey's more interesting to me. He has more variety in her songwriting. He also reminds me more of like a classic, like like author. Like I get a big like a Flannery O'Connor, J.D. Salinger vibe, like the writing style. It's a bit more gives you more to think about mentally than Fiona Apple personally. But they're both great.
I think I slightly lean PJ, although it's mainly just because I feel like I can listen to more PJ Harvey than I can Fiona Apple in one sitting. Although I think Fiona Apple, Fetch the Bolt Cutter is an extraordinary machine. No, I think if I had to say my favorite records from each, it's Extraordinary Machine and then To Bring You My Love. I like it a little bit more than Fetch the Bolt Cutters. This is when Vanessa picks Tori Amos.
Well, if that's an option. But I would pick Fiona Apple. I pretty well, not famously, but like infamously did not connect with PJ Harvey. I don't dislike PJ Harvey. I respect what PJ Harvey does, but I don't know. It's PJ Harvey overall is like how the last couple Fiona albums were for me. Like just did not connect. But actually I probably liked the last Fiona Apple albums more than most of PJ Harvey, although there was a few things I thought were okay. Like I went to 3.5 as a peak on PJ Harvey, but my lowest was 2.5. So it wasn't like I there's this conception that I hate her, but I mean it's more just like I just don't connect to her the way that other people do, and like that has always frustrated me about her. Like that's always been the case for PJ Harvey. This is not really a new revelation. It's just kind of been cemented now.
You did better than other people that week, so it's okay.
Yeah, like I didn't go 0.5 or anything. Like she's not that bad. Like she's another artist I respect more than I like. It's really the best way to put it.
I will say if I wasn't a songwriter myself, I probably wouldn't be as into PJ Harvey as I am. I'm a really big fan of her as a whole.
I just
the criticism at the same time.
I think PJ Harvey might be a more interesting artist, but Fiona Apple was definitely the more consistent artist. Well, alrighty, with that being said, I will bring us into our next artist. And once again, I'm just so happy. We are going to my specialty, late 90s to 2000s indie rock with maybe one of the titans up there. We're going to be doing Death Cab for Cutie. That fell out of the track. Yeah, we're going to have another guest. Vanessa's going to be bidding us goodbye, and Miss Stilly down there has decided to skip the week. Luckily for you, Aiden is going to be trying to brutally destroy all of these records because he hates everything post the 90s. And yeah, that being said, I hope everybody has a good one. Hope you enjoyed our critical analysis of the Fiona Apple records, and we will catch you for Death Cab for Cutie. Bye.